Hello, and welcome to Stand Up Daily, coming from the shed. A show where we lay it down to those hard-hitting linguistic questions. Is it sepia or sepia? Is it crayon or crayon? Is it bona fides or bona fides? With your host, Pete Dominic. A man, if you saw naked, you'd say, looks about right.
Thank you very much, Joe Liotta. That sounds like you recorded it with a Fisher-Price microphone, and that is the quality I expect, sir. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stand Up Pete Dominic Daily here each and every day. Almost every episode welcomes two amazing guests and a huge news segment. But on Fridays, because it's the day after Thursdays, where I hang out with subscribers to the show, I don't do the news segment. At least that's been the case the last couple of weeks. Give myself a little break here on the last day, but not a break on the guest. Joining me today, my favorite doctor, your favorite doctor, Dr. Aaron Carroll, joins me to talk about all the latest news on vaccines, the pandemic, and more. And it's Friday, so that means Christian Finnegan joins us for Finnegan Fridays. Had a great conversation with Christian as well. So very excited to share both of those with you. Last night, we hung out, about 50 of us, stand-up subscribers, welcoming my guest from 2 episodes ago. India Walton is running for mayor of Buffalo, and she was great. She was so much fun, so smart, took all of our questions, and hopefully we raised a little bit of money for her. But definitely consider a donation to India Walton, and I'll try to play the audio of the part of her joining us next week. IndiaWalton.com, by the way. She was the guest of the week, folks, because she was new, first-timer, and just great. Loved having her at the Hangout. Loved seeing everybody last night as well. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, as always. That was great. Sign up now with a paid subscription. Welcome to all the new subscribers as well. Thank you all for joining me. The podcast's going very well here every day. Loving doing it, and in a great place, folks. I'm doing very well. Excited about all the new possibilities that are opening up too. So let me stop yammering and get to the interviews. That's what you're here for. Awesome conversation with Dr. Aaron Carroll for you, starting us off. He, of course, is... And now, what is his official title at Indiana University, where, of course, he is a pediatrician and he is a head of research, but now he also led their mitigation efforts at IU as well. And he has got a pretty big presence in multimedia because he writes for New York Times Opinion. He blogs at The Incidental Economist. He has a very popular award-winning YouTube channel, Healthcare Triage, and you can follow him on Twitter, where he's very popular. Aaron E. Carroll joining me from Indiana University yesterday. We had a great conversation. I think you're going to like it and learn from it, as we always do. And here we go. All right, there is everybody's favorite doctor, the hero of Indiana University, Dr. Aaron Carroll. Everybody, hi.
How are you?
You're heroic now there. You're heroic. You have been attending graduations at the several different campuses, and you can look around and say, I am why these students were able to do this because of your role at Indiana University of mitigating the pandemic. Congratulations.
Well, there are other people too. So it's like I've sent it to my teams at time and been like, this is because of you. But yes, no,
I don't care about those other people. There's no doubt
in my mind. Well, I do, but there's no doubt in my mind. Like, it's interesting in that the pandemic has sucked. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think I've ever done anything that has this much direct and immediate impact as the work we've been doing this year, during the pandemic at IU. It's been truly transformational. It's impressive.
It's fascinating because for years you've been joining me and so many other media outlets and helping people learn, and to them you're like a folk hero. You've created a lot of arguments though in people's families and lives with all of your excellent research.
Oh, thank you. But this experience has been immensely rewarding. Hugely.
Is there anything that you could say that was the most important thing, one thing you did, or is it an hour-long dissertation about how the different mitigation efforts that you applied?
Me personally, I think it was, that we sort of convinced locally, leadership and everything else, that we really needed to commit to a massive, asymptomatic surveillance / mitigation testing scheme, that we needed to be able to pinpoint where the risk was, and then truly manage it by constantly finding every case and getting them out of the population. Like, every school that shut down has the same story. They're like, we thought everything was okay. And then all of a sudden, like, we had 100 cases and we didn't know where they were coming from or what was going on. So we just had to shut it down. When we had our little mini surge at the beginning, it took us, very little time to be like, it's there and there and there. Everyone else is fine. So then we could really start concentrating testing. And, then we figured out, okay, well, look, the real risks are the Greek houses, the dorms, this group less so, that group more so. And we could change our monitor. Like, our faculty and employees, like, barely any COVID the entire pandemic. But in the Greek houses, sometimes it was massive. But we were local. We knew exactly where we were testing. This semester, Congress you live in, we were testing them twice a week. So, like, every time there was nervous, like, oh my gosh, 3 kids on this floor have it. What do we do? I'd be like, we tested them all. Today we'll test them all again in 3 days. We're going to catch every case. We'll get them out. We'll put them in like the isolation and quarantine housing, and this will get squashed. And every single time it was. And, committing to that kind of scheme certainly made, I think, a big difference. At least that was what we were pushing for, but other people made other contributions. Our contact tracing team is just amazing. The amount of tracking down cases and getting people where they need to be. All the information was our communications group did amazing work. Lots of people were involved.
Based on everything that you learned, if we ever have something similar, a variant of this virus, a different virus, would you be so much more prepared at your campus and do you think, around the country, around the world? Or have we learned so much that if there is, and how likely do you think there will be another issue that we would be able to apply what we've learned?
You say we, and we, it depends what you mean by we. Like, do I think IU would be prepared? Yeah. We built 3 labs. Like, we bought we bought PCR machines. We bought robots to do all the liquid handling. We can do like 50,000 plus tests a week without sweating. We're ready to go. We built up the infrastructure. We know how to set up mass testing sites, and we know how to get all the information from here and there and pull people out and do it. We know how to hire and train, a legion of contact tracers. We know how to set up the symptomatic testing pathways. We know how to set up a vaccination pod. Like, we have now institutional knowledge where I believe we would be really good at handling this. Does the country have that? No. Like, in many areas of the country, they still have not figured out how to do. They're barely doing symptomatic testing, let alone, mitigation testing or surveillance testing. And, it's still difficult to get the information out there. So one of the things that we've talked about before is that, the countries in Asia have done a much better job of this than countries in Western Europe and in the Western Hemisphere. I think partially that's because we never dealt with SARS, and they did. And so they're dealing with SARS allowed them to build up significant infrastructure that made them really good at handling COVID. But I don't think we've often made those same kind of leaps and bounds, at least not universally across the United States, where there are still places that if this happened again, I think that they'd to some extent be starting from scratch. And that's a tragedy.
The official numbers for deaths in America are like a little over, I think, 500,000, over 500,000. But we learned last week that there's some new research or new data that has come out that said it could be as much as twice that. Experts like Anthony Fauci say that, there's good reason to believe that might be true. What are your thoughts on that? What is that data? How accurate is it?
I think that's a floor. I agree with him. I know it's twice that. I don't know, but I think it's a floor. I mean, if you just look at excess deaths, like how many more deaths did we have in the United States than we expected? It's way more than what the number that are just attributed straight up to COVID. So if you don't believe it's COVID, then what's your argument? What are the increased deaths? Did just more people die of heart attacks and cancer and whatever? And it's like, and even then, if you're like, well, if they died of those things because the hospitals were too busy taking care of COVID, that is also due to COVID. So I have no doubt that at the end, what we really are going to have to care about is like how many extra people died this year. And that's going to be way more than just those that are known positively to have had COVID. Like, look, like my dad died in the fall. My mom is declining rapidly from her Alzheimer's disease. And I don't know if she'll make it through the year. And at the end of the day, I would say both of them died because of COVID, even though they didn't have COVID, because it was secondary effects and bank shots, other effects. And it's like, there's way more. We're going to be dealing with the effects of this for a long, long time, long after very few people are dying from COVID itself. And It's what do you attribute it? Like, if you are massively unhealthy your whole life and at the end you have a heart attack and die, is it the heart attack that killed you or your massive unhealthy lifestyle? So it's hard to attribute sometimes.
So now the new guidance has come out from the CDC, then the FDA, or the other way around, I think, on vaccinating first 16 and over, and now it's 12 to 15. A lot of parents are concerned. I told you my wife's concerned after listening to actually an NPR podcast. And there was a doctor who said, basically, he just wasn't comfortable with the sample size, which was small, 2,000 or something like that. What do you say to parents who are concerned? Or more importantly, what's the difference, like physiologically, between a teenage body or even an infant, much less an adult, with vaccines? I'm sure it's different based on the vaccine.
I mean, as a pediatrician, this discussion is somewhat surprising to me because, we vaccinate babies every day. Like, we vaccinate small children. They're the vast majority of people who get vaccinated.
But we've been giving that vaccine to babies forever, and those babies grew up to be adults who had babies themselves. And so long-term,
infant and childhood vaccinations are arguably the greatest public health achievement of all time.
Right.
You could maybe argue about clean water or nutrition, but it's it's hard to argue massive benefit. And we regularly, the vaccinations for which we achieve herd immunity and for which we have, real massive uptake, we give them to babies, we give them to kids. There's just no reason conceptually and scientifically to think, why would this be a greater danger to a 14-year-old than it would be to an 18-year-old.
Because it's not been Tucker Carlson says out loud, he's like, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. And then he leaves his mouth open and doesn't ask actually an expert on his show like I'm doing now.
So, yes, the world could blow up in 5. It's I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, but we have to make educated guesses. And there's really no sort of science to tell us how a vaccine would interact with a 14-year-old's body to make them massively unsafe. Again, you're also weighing this very small, if it exists, very small risk against the very real risk of COVID. People get COVID and die all the time. People get COVID and get sick.
But not young people.
They're babies. There are kids that have had, we all have seen those news stories about the kids that have had the Kawasaki syndrome after they got COVID. It's dangerous. It's not as dangerous as it is to a 70-year-old, certainly, but it is dangerous, more dangerous than the vaccine, which again is what you're weighing it against. It's and also it's there's the continued pandemic is I think everyone would argue that living like this has its toll. We were just talking about the fact that there's a cost to all of this that we can end if enough people get vaccinated. So, but again, I'm just on the side of if you want to work through the logistics of how would it damage I've yet to hear a good argument of how it would damage theoretically a 14-year-old in a way that it would not an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. And putting my money where my mouth is Noah and Jacob, who are 17 and 19, are already fully vaccinated. And my daughter, who'll be 15 in June, has an appointment on Saturday. And the only thing we had to negotiate with her was trying to do it around tennis matches so her arm wouldn't hurt the next day. But other than that, it's as soon as possible.
That is always the most convincing thing to me. I was telling my daughter this. I was telling Ava this. I was like, listen, you know what? I'm not concerned, but the thing that always makes me rest so easy is when 2 of my best friends, who are doctors and scientists, are vaccinating their similar aged daughters. Yeah. And if I trust Aaron Carroll with my life, and I trust him with my daughter's life, and the same thing with my other buddy who just got his daughter vaccinated, who I've known my whole life. So it's to me, that's always the most convincing thing because
and people are not good at this. They want certainties. They want give me 100% chance that nothing bad is going to happen. Right. And I'm always one, that doesn't exist. 2, it's the number one killer of kids by far is accidents. It's cars. Do you ever think twice about loading your kid in the car? No. And it's 1,000 kids will die every year. It's that's a percentage chance, way more than will die from a vaccine, way more. And you load them in the car every day. Every day. Don't even think about it. So it's just everybody wants this proof of 100%. There is no such thing. people die. It's like bad stuff happens. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than a lot of these things we're worried about. But that doesn't keep you inside because you're like, you know what? The joy of life is more, I'll go outside. I might get hit by lightning. Or, I may get in a car accident, but, it's just still pretty rare. And life, this is what it is. And we go skiing and people jump out of airplanes and they go scuba diving and they play sports and they eat weird foods and all kinds of
I want to jump out of a helicopter. I want to jump out of a helicopter with skis on. Would you do that with me?
I will not. I don't even want to jump out of a plane. Like, I'm just not into like the whole parachute. Like, that just seems like risk that like I don't need.
Oh, that's interesting. You sound like a hypocrite based on the stats on
because
skydiving.
They risks and benefits, and I don't think the benefit that I would gain from that warrants the risk. Like, I don't want to do it. Like, people are always like, "Do it with me," and I'm like, I don't really want to do it. Like, why would I take a risk for something I don't want to do?
Because I understand that, but a lot of people would be super entertained by your face. I know I would be. Like when they film a person, like I really want to see your face against all that wind, and I also want you to, based on what you're telling me now, look semi-bored about it. Like, you know what?
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. Like, meh.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Just like, again, it's like
shrugging.
I just don't like. It's never been a goal of mine, so why bother?
Bungee jumping, zip lining
is massive.
Bungee jumping or zip lining.
Oh, zip lining. I'm not a big fan of the bungee scares me, but the zip lining I'd do.
Yeah, I'd rather jump out of it.
I freely admit, like, I don't think I'd enjoy bungee jumping. Like, there's no positive.
Why take our joy from watching you? And I'm including your whole family. Your whole family.
Well, if it was the joy of everyone else was so massive, maybe you could convince me.
We're going to start a campaign. So
right.
I also want to ask you about this series of tweets that you put out a few days ago where you wrote, as a wealthy country, we and others like us should step up and pay for countries that need more help. It's still a massive bargain.
This was because, like, I just feel like I know I'm going to get anger from this, but it's just like honest, just being honest. Like, look, I have been on your show and I've written many, many, many words talking about like how drugs are often a waste of money and pharmaceutical companies are playing fancy games with Me Too drugs. And
what's a Me Too drug? You tweeted that.
Like a drug, when they make like a drug that's exactly the same, but it's only one enantiomer, and then it's like, or it's barely different, and it doesn't really provide almost any good, and they charge more for it. Drives me crazy. But vaccines are a goddamn miracle. Like, it's like the fact that people are quibbling and arguing about whether Pfizer or Moderna should make money off of this. I'm like, I don't care. Pay them double. Like, this is what we want. If we want to incentivize companies to make things which change the world, like I don't care if it costs $40 billion. Like, if you told me that we could spend, let's say they want $20 a vaccine, and I can vaccinate the whole freaking world for $300 billion, do it. It's cheap at twice the price. Like, I don't care if they make money. Like, who cares? Like, and it's also like we're not attacking the real bottlenecks. Like, everybody's focused on IP and taking away their patent protection. The bottleneck in making mRNA vaccines is there's literally only like 3 buildings in the world which can manufacture them. What I would like to do is say, like, turn to Pfizer and Moderna and say, what will it cost you? How much do I need to pay to make 6 more buildings so that we can start churning this stuff out? Name a number. We'll make it happen. Like I don't care what this is where I'm like,
and that would be instead it's like, that would be that would be the government's role to
spend more money. Like, the idea that we're going to release IP and that's how we're going to get vaccines to India today. No, like, that's not even close. Like, none of this will help India. What would help India is if we shipped our AstraZeneca over there right now, or if we said to these other companies, like, what do you got? We'll pay whatever amount you need to double, triple, quadruple your production. Let's make facilities. There are things we could do. And instead we're like screaming and yelling about, Pfizer shouldn't, make a dime, or like, it's like, and I'm almost always on that side of the argument, but
not with vaccines.
This is what we want companies to do. Like, we want them to make stuff like this. I want another few vaccines this good, not focusing on what they're normally doing. And if we need to pay them to do that, then that's a great use of economic incentives. And I just think you
have written so much and done a tremendous amount of research on on best outcomes, public health outcomes, and you've never been judgmental necessarily on how we get there. And sometimes there's some really unorthodox ways that work. I'm interpreting what I've heard and read from you, which is, hey, this works. This is the thing that works the best to lose weight, to do whatever, cure your diabetes, whatever it might be. And so what do you think of these ideas that have been rolled out at the state level, at the community level, to incentivize people who, for whatever reason, aren't getting vaccinated, like in Ohio, a lottery or a burger or whatever it is? Are they effective, or are they just, should we make fun of them?
This is where I'm thrilled they're trying, and I think incentives are great. But if you wanted me, I'd be like, well, what do you think would work better? Offering 100,000 people a one-time chance to win $1 million, or offering all of them a guaranteed 10? Maybe that works better. It's the same amount of money. And so I'm just only in the sense of they've chosen the lottery. I'd be like, I'm all for the attempt, but I would love to see some real work and what's the best way.
Just 150 bucks. You said 10, but you're saying just everybody gets paid.
But it's the same thing. In other words, if I have 100,000 people that I might get vaccinated this way, I can either give them all one chance to win $1 million, or I could give each of them 10. It's the same $1 million, but which works better? I don't know. I would love to know. And instead, they've chosen this approach. And I'm like, well, if you're willing to spend, why don't we just pay everyone in Ohio $20 and go get vaccinated? Maybe it'll cost $20 million. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. But it's I'm all for the attempt, and I'm all for incentives. I just would love to see us do a little rigor and thought into how we do this.
Where are we on masking right now? The CDC is getting a lot of criticism from progressives, in fact, I think, as well. And I'm wondering, I got an email just before we started that my daughter's school district says we have to wear a mask if we are going to attend her track meet. We're only allowed 2 people to attend. Track is outside. I'm wearing a mask at her track meet? I'll do it. I don't care. I'll do whatever. But that's where are they getting that guide? That seems too much.
Well, I just pitched this piece. God knows if they'll let me write it. Look, at some level, this is what the CDC does. I mean, I've been on your show. I've written columns. I've written blog posts, done videos. It's if you listen to the CDC, they'll tell you can only have 2.3 grams of salt a day. There's no science in that. If you are very little, proving that's the number. If you listen to the CDC, they say women of childbearing age, not trying to get, women of childbearing age should never drink alcohol. Nobody listens to that. They'll say never, ever, ever eat cookie dough, ever. Nobody listens to that. The CDC is always going to take a very conservative tack. That's what they do, because they're not going to give you guidelines about the individual activities you should do. They'll say this will be safest. And since we're telling you what's safe, wearing a mask until most people are vaccinated is safest. But most people are probably willing to take a level of risk above that. And you're right, being outside right now unmasked, unless you're in a screaming concert, unless you're at Lollapalooza, is probably pretty safe. But I'll still wear the mask if they tell me to when I go to watch my daughter play tennis, but a lot of people aren't. But but on the other hand, it's I've said all along, I walk sometimes with the guy who lives across the street in the morning. I've never worn a mask to do that, ever. Because we've been 6 feet apart and outside since the beginning of the pandemic, and we've always known that's an incredibly low risk activity, and I know that, and I can make that determination. So
you told me off air you guys kiss hello and goodbye before your walk. Why don't you be more consistent on? Is he listening?
That is not COVID safe, not. But look, I think the CDC is being pretty conservative, and I also think publicly we're just not selling vaccines enough. Look, if you're vaccinated, you're safe.
If you're vaccinated
people are not, which is why you should think about them and be careful for them. But if you're vaccinated, that's amazing. Your chance of getting COVID is much lower. Your chances of giving COVID is lower, and your chance of getting sick or really sick or God forbid dying is almost zero. Again, lower than probably cars and everything. So it's the vaccines are amazing, but we don't act like that. We act oh, you got vaccinated, but I still need you to stay there and it's that's a bad message.
You and I spoke the other day, and I was making an argument that what Tucker Carlson and others, but especially him, are doing every night is really damaging in terms of scaring the hell out of people about these vaccinations. And you raised your voice and said, go watch my healthcare triage on the history of anti-vax, and I did, and it was super helpful. You're saying there is always going to be a contingency of people like Tucker Carlson and others screaming, and how much of a difference or impact it makes is where maybe we disagree. I don't have any.
If you think Tucker Carlson, if you think Tucker Carlson is the one reason we're having difficulty getting to herd immunity, I'm like this was going to happen. Like this has happened. Like with every, like I think the example I cited, and again, there's another picture about this. Like HPV. Like at this moment, this vaccine's been around for years. We know it cures it. Prevents cancer. It's amazing. Not to mention it prevents getting HPV. In 18 to 26-year-olds, I think it's like 22% of people are fully vaccinated, according to the CDC. Like that's nothing. Like why? Because we don't mandate it in schools. Is that Tucker Carlson's fault? No. That's not. It's hard to get people to do stuff. It's very hard. And so we're gonna plateau. We're going to plateau no matter what. I can't get people to eat right. I can't get people to listen to science all the time. Like that's what we do. So, we just have to act like we live in this world. It is hard to get people to do stuff. We need to use incentives and all other kinds of things to get them to do it. I'm all for the full court press, but I think trying to demonize one thing is this is why we don't have we're always trying to blame others. Even when we say vaccine hesitancy, as if it's their fault, when there's often a variety of reasons, some of which are legitimate, why some people have difficulty vaccinating, and we don't do enough to make it as easy as possible and
such as getting I think one of the obvious one is just availability and getting to that destination. I mean, if you're vaccinating kids in a nurse's office,
if your work won't guarantee you paid time off if you feel like shit the next day, then you might not get vaccinated.
Good point.
Why would I get vaccinated if I could feel sick for the next 2 days and it's going to cost me vacation time?
That's a really good one. I didn't think of a lot of.
No one cares about that.
A lot of offices. I remember at Sirius they offered the flu vaccine in the office. I mean, that's probably not common, much less in schools. But we did get an email that our daughter's high school is going to be hopefully offering the vaccine. I mean, things like that make a huge difference because they can just walk in and get it, right?
It does make it easier, but you got to remember, Pfizer and Moderna have very specific refrigeration requirements. It makes it more difficult. It's not like we can just do that. J&J, we could, but the supply is limited. But it is also, I think it's I see all this stuff we'll give you a free ride to get the vaccine, and some workers, they'll give you 2 hours off to go get the vaccine. It's but if you don't get people off, if they get ill and don't feel well, like you and I knew we could just take the day off, if we needed to. If we don't feel well the next day, then we'll just rest, whatever. But that lots of people can't do that.
Wow, my boss was a dick about it.
No. Your boss, is that your wife? Right now, who's your boss?
Shut up! No, yeah. I'm sorry. He's listening right now.
Who's your boss?
My fake producer, Keith. He's a small boy. So where are you on then mandates in terms of schools or,
I'm all for it.
You're all for mandates at every level of school and business?
Well, I think we need to be creative in how we do it, but I think vaccine mandates are the way that we achieve herd immunity. I mean, every thing that's around now, where we have pretty much herd immunity, they're mandated in schools across the country. Measles, mumps, rubella, even varicella, we've achieved high levels of vaccination because schools require them. Often healthcare facilities require them. I think it's possible jobs might require them. In the past, the government has had mandates for polio and smallpox when those were a big deal. Where are those today? This is what we do. So we need to achieve success quickly because we don't have 5 years to wait for this. This is bad. It's really bad. And so, I'm more for, trying to find. Now, again, mandates don't mean we hold you down and vaccinate you. It means we create carrots and sticks in such a way that the vast majority, there was a mandate for Obamacare. It wasn't buy insurance or I'm going to put you in jail. It was buy insurance or pay this tax, or, if you can't meet these requirements, you're going to have to do this. And eventually they were it's a tax. That's a mandate. We could find ways to say, no, what could happen? You want to go to Disney World, maybe you're going to need to get vaccinated. You want to fly, might need to get vaccinated. You want to work at this company or go to a Colts game, might need to get vaccinated. There are incentives and things that eventually could push enough people there, we get to herd immunity. But we'll see what happens.
Last question for you. You got time about your article, your essay in the New York Times? Your most recent piece in the New York Times is titled, When Can We Declare the Pandemic Over? That's right. He writes at the New York Times. Big deal. Aaron Carroll, our guest. And this is a great article. I think it's an important article, and everybody should go read it and click it and comment on it. But what's the easiest way to describe how we know when this is over?
I mean, some of the stuff I think we talked about before. It's like, I think, too many people are waiting for zero. Like zero COVID. Like they think, when is it going to, they think normal is perfectly safe. And it's like, that's never been the case. Like, in a flu season, for instance, a good flu season, not a bad one, like 100 people a day will die of flu. If we get to a point where like 100 people a day are dying of COVID, the vast majority of people who get sick get well. For most people, it's a nothing burger, where it's, it isn't just any day more dangerous than any other respiratory virus. We're going back to normal. Like if you're waiting for COVID zero, it's not going to happen. Not unless we really mandate this and drive it into the ground. So we should probably start talking about an exit strategy and what that will look like. Are we there yet? No. Pandemic raging, lots of concerns, need to get people vaccinated and everything else. But I think we got to start talking about how we ramp this down. Michigan's done a good job of this. Like they said, like at each benchmark of vaccination, we're going to pull some things away. Like we got to have a stepwise program that people can expect. Otherwise, people are just going to start abandoning their posts and being like, screw it, I'm back to normal, which you're already seeing in some states. So we just have to start talking about a staged, rational exit from this as we ramp up and maybe incentivize people to get there instead of just, letting half the population believe we can't do anything, or I shouldn't say it, letting some percent of the population believe we can't do anything until it's zero, and letting, therefore, another percent of the population be like, screw it, I'm done.
In the future, is it going to be like social etiquette if someone has a cold or cough to be like, hey, would you mind throwing a mask on? Because I got to sit next to you this whole bus ride.
No, I would go one further with you. I'd say social etiquette should be, if you're freaking sick, don't go out. Like, don't go out. Like, why? Do not ever come to work sick again. Don't go out sick again. If you're sick, stay home.
But you have to. You already gave this example. You can't. Why? Because I can't afford to stay home.
We should have sick leave policies. No. Oh. There should be sick leave policies and everything else to protect all of us. In fact, Austin, I know, has written a number of columns on this, on how like the fact that we have no good sick leave policies probably costs not only lives, but the economy. So yeah, we should absolutely protect people but people in general should stay home when they're sick. They should not go out. And I think masking up, if you're even thinking about it, is also a pretty good idea. I mean, in fact, having more ubiquitous masking during respiratory virus season is probably a good idea. But no, if you're sick, don't go out. Don't go out.
So I can go up to a guy at work, the fake guy I work with, and be like, hey, man, you shouldn't even be in the shed with me. You're like, go home.
Well, yes.
This
you
is
and the fake guy
shed.
Can do that. Doing that, walking around doing that to people all day, probably not going to make you a lot of friends. I probably wouldn't do that.
Where are you on filling plastic bags with gasoline? Have you weighed in on this?
Why? Is that a real thing? Like, what the fuck?
It actually was.
What are people?
It's funny because it's one of those things. How the internet now works is that people recycle a thing that actually happened a few years ago, but you think it's happening today. So is this whole run on the gas stations because the hack, which the pipeline turned itself down off. They didn't hack and turn it off anyway, and so people got panicked. And there's this video. You haven't seen it? The lady with the plastic bag, plastic bag at the gas station.
How does she think that's a good idea? What is she going to do with it when she gets home?
It's leaking, and she puts, I don't know. Everybody's trying to get her to interview her. I think she's the All right. Did you at least see the lady pouring spaghetti sauce on the counter?
I did see that. But that has to be fake. Come on. She's just looking for clicks. Don't give her the satisfaction.
Do you look at TikTok?
Nobody does that. Come on.
Do you TikTok?
We're talking about trying to get a healthcare triage TikTok started. I have been in my daughter's dance TikToks. So
do you watch them?
I have my own channel? No.
Do you watch them?
Oh, sometimes, yeah.
I love TikTok. I get it. I get why it's addictive.
I love TikTok. I also like Facebook Reels, but it's basically the same thing.
Oh, I haven't even seen that. Oh, I don't need another one.
It's their attempt to get people to TikTok. It looks like they probably just load up the videos twice. But yeah, no, I enjoy those. They're great.
Great.
My daughter's super TikTok.
Yeah, my daughter's too. It's ridiculous. Thank you so much for joining me. There's so much more to talk about, but you've covered a lot of it at Healthcare Triage, including the recent announcement on menthol cigarettes. A very good episode. So thank you so much for your time. As always, greatly appreciated, sir.
You got it.
All right, Dr. Aaron Carroll, how about that? Always love our conversations. I learned so much from him, more than almost anybody else, if anybody else at all. Such a good friend of mine as well. Please go on Twitter and tell him that you heard him on the show. I mean, he's been a regular for years, but it never gets old. Thank him for joining us. The least we can do at Aaron E. Carroll on Twitter. And also, of course, go subscribe to his YouTube channel, Healthcare Triage. Read him at the New York Times, his blog, The Incidental Economist. And what else can I tell you? He's just the best. Okay. And another guy who I adore and love is comedian Christian Finnegan. He joins me every Friday. He's become one of your favorites, of course, too, because he just makes so much sense and puts so much nuance to things, and he's hilarious. He is a very talented comedian who you may have seen on The Chappelle Show or VH1 Best Week Ever or so many other shows as well. He's got a number of stand-up comedy albums, which you should all buy. And I'll actually be with him Saturday night doing my first stand-up spot at his wife's venue, QED, in Queens. You can see Christian and I there Saturday night, just doing a quick set. I have no idea how that's going to go, but I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to sharing my latest conversation with Christian Finnegan, who is on Twitter, at Christ Finnegan, right now. Okay, so you're telling me, Christian Finnegan, that
yes,
because you're having open heart surgery, you're not going to be on the show next week?
I mean, it's really awkward for you to do this to me on the air, Pete.
Why?
This was a private, because we have representatives that hash this out. My people are talking. Yeah,
I know. I talked to your people, and they said you are contractually obligated through 2037.
This is why I pay a fleet of lawyers, Pete, is to protect me from your bullying.
Well, when is the surgery? Because we tape Thursdays. Can we just, like, if the drugs have worn off?
It's I mean, yes, I think my chest cavity will be sewn up in time.
Do you know about the Wi-Fi situation at the hospital?
The problem is, do you have a problem? I may still be intubated. Is that going to be awkward for if?
Let me check. I think I'll let listeners respond to that question. I think that'd be gross, but a lot of people really like hearing from you. And if I think that's fine. I think you'll be weaker than that.
Fuck you.
How are you feeling?
I'm all right, I guess.
I mean, that's got to be same thing as last week. Not like always on your mind kind of thing.
Oh, sure. Constantly. And I got this weird call from Mount Sinai earlier today, that I guess my doctor, my surgeon, they're shooting something for the New York Times centered on my surgeon. Who's like the head of the cardiac department at Mount Sinai, or like a high up dude or whatever. And I think it's probably one of those like paid videos that's going to run on the New York Times website. It's probably one of those advertorial type things or whatever. And where they're going to follow him around all day, and they want to follow him doing surgery on one of his patients and meeting with the patient ahead of time. And they have asked me if I would be that person.
Do you know if it's SAG?
Super weird. I do not know what the union rules are. They said there may be some compensation.
Well, of course but they must have looked at maybe his list of patients and said, this dude is a professional, well-known comedian. That's a win-win for everybody because he'll be good on camera and people know who he is. Like,
I have the feeling the woman who called me was unaware that I was a stand-up comic. Maybe my surgeon told her, but I think I'm younger than most of the people that have this surgery. And so I guess that means they're relatively confident I won't die. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they probably wouldn't be setting themselves up for,
that's
photographer.
Absolutely a good way to look at it. But I just got a message from your surgeon who said they have to bump you for Big J Okerson.
Oh, so man, if I had $1 for every time.
There's another comedian having a similar surgery that they would rather
What's awkward about Jay having surgery is that they have to surgically remove the fingerless gloves off of his hands before they get into surgery. For people don't know, Jay wears fingerless gloves all the time.
And a lot of other weird things.
Like he's John Bender from Breakfast Club.
Jay, we're going to have to take this chain that connects your wallet to your belt loop. Is that going to be a problem?
Is it going to be awkward if we surgically remove the frosted tips from your hair?
Where are you, by the way, on accessories? Like, as a man, jewelry.
I used to wear some, and you know, Jay and I are friendly. It's
that's why I picked on him.
Yeah, it's. I used to wear like not a wristband. I never was like one of those leather wristband dudes in the early aughts, but I did wear one of those stupidly wide watches where the watch band was 3 inches or 4 inches wide.
Well,
which is kind of like, I want to wear a leather wristband, but I don't have the confidence to just say I'm wearing a letter wristband. So let's throw a watch face on there.
Functional. Yeah.
Yes.
But that's a phase that you went through. I mean, in the last, do you know?
I got my ear to the ground, and that was the fashion of the times, the worst fashion period ever. I used to wear a puka shell necklace for probably way too long. One of the black ones.
Oof.
And I had a pirate hoop earring that I used to wear all the time. Mm-hmm,
okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
But that was months ago.
I talked to you months ago. I don't remember that. I would have immediately asked about it. What about you? Are you a wedding band man?
It's funny. I actually like my wedding band. I got like kind of a dark gray one. I don't like gold, generally speaking. I just don't like the way it looks. Yeah, and so it's a good looking ring, but I've gotten out of the habit of wearing it since quarantine began. And so now I keep forgetting. And so half the time I'm on stage and I'm talking about my wife, and I've seen a couple people even poke the person next to him. It's like, he's not wearing a ring. Yeah. So it all feels like a ruse. Like maybe my wife died years ago and this is just what I do to keep her memory alive.
I've had a similar experience, and coming off stage, I've never worn a wedding band. I wore one for like 3 months. I don't like, I just don't like the way jewelry feels on my hands.
Well, it makes it so hard to get laid.
And it's a cock block. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But people would come up to me when they would ask, and I would say, I said this, and you're going to punch me in the face. But I was like, my wife and I don't believe in ownership. And that's kind of like, I wasn't serious, but
they didn't know that.
They didn't know that. No. They just like, what? Never even heard that. I was like, yeah. No, actually, my wedding band was a little too big. When I would wash my face in the shower after the third time this happened, I almost ripped my eyebrow off.
Oh,
I was like, fuck this. Took it off. That was 10 years ago. I haven't. Yeah.
Well, go figure.
Doesn't fit. Never fit.
No, I like actually having a wedding band, but I don't know if this is interesting to anybody.
Well, I'm moving on now. So.
Sorry, sometimes you just hear yourself talking and you're like, I would turn me off right now.
So I want to ask you, though, just real quick, I don't want to belabor it, but, I think it's really helpful for other people to hear. And you're always so open and talking about it. Like there's your daily practice is just you're basically settling on you'll feel better when it's over kind of thing. How are you?
I guess. I mean, I've gotten a lot of very nice. And I don't know if I spoke about this last week, so if I have, then I apologize for being redundant. But I've gotten a lot of extremely nice, tweets and emails from people I know, people I don't know, just support and wishing me well, and also a few people who have had either the same procedure or a procedure that's similar.
I think that's a great reason to talk about it. Yeah,
and that has been helpful and unhelpful at the same time. Like one guy who had my procedure, but had like major complications, which I don't anticipate having. So I don't really need to hear about how everything went wrong for him.
Right. Yeah.
And the last thing he said to me, and again, nice dude, thanks for reaching out. But he was like, hey, just remember when you wake up in excruciating pain, that means it was a success.
Oof.
Like, dude, I don't. Come on, man.
No, I've been thinking about you a lot because just thinking about how the smallest things get me worried and how my mind focuses on them sometimes and thinking that we're all inevitably most likely going to have to go through something at some point like this, especially as we get older. And so I'm like, I don't know how Christian, it must be really hard. It's just really hard, to have it on your mind. But
distractions
help, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the thing is that my wife is actually out of town right now. She gets home the night before I get admitted into the hospital because she had this trip on the books to see her family and to go to her niece's high school graduation months ago. And this is kind of the way I visited my dad a few weeks ago. This is her kind of post-COVID, see my mom type trip. And that means that I have to cover QED, the venue she owns, which means I'm just like kind of crazy busy this week, which is, you know, part of me resents on some level. It's like, I should have all the time I need to stew and feel sorry for myself. And then the other part of me like, oh God, thank God I have something to get up for and get moving for. I try to not overthink it too much to, you know, I'm living my life. It's fine. It's going to happen. It has to happen. So whatever, what are you going to do about it? Whether you think about it or don't think about it, it's going to happen. But you know, people who reach out, you know, they're all very nice and nobody knows really what to say unless you've had something like that or whatever. Nobody really understands what to say. But, you know, we all kind of fall back on cliches when we're wishing people well in situations like this. And I try to not like roll my eyes at the sort of the cliches, even though I understand that I would be serving up the same cliches and the opposite. But, you know, like I think my least favorite of the cliches is you got this. I've gotten so many, you got this. First of all, I know I got this. I don't want this. You take it. I'm quite aware that I got this.
Isn't that exactly what your doctor said after your test came back?
Yeah. Hey, by the way, your test came back and you got this. This aortic aneurysm thing, you got this.
Meaning.
It's so well meaning.
Absolutely right about the reaction to it.
And also, it's like, how do you know?
I don't have this. I'm a fucking wreck. It's really, really upsetting me and making it hard to live my life. I don't have it. I probably will never have it. And that's okay.
That I'm in control of the situation does not affect the degree to which I'm in control of the situation.
How about this? If I were you, I would have this.
Yeah.
Because I have the resources.
You have this.
I think the nicest thing I'm thinking about what someone can say in situations like this. I honestly think this, especially if they don't know you, is, hey, my name's so-and-so. I had this surgery, or someone I know did. I'm a surgeon, whatever. If you want to talk, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, wish you the best. Like that to me is like really helpful. I've reached out to people like that. Oftentimes, complete strangers like, oh, what did you do when you had?
And that's true even of things that aren't as dire as
I've never had anything like this. I'm talking about buying a car.
But yeah, exactly. Or like a friend of mine is buying a house upstate New York near where my wife and I have a cabin. So of course I want to reach out because I didn't want to acquire all this stupid information for nothing. Like I don't want to know the number of a good plumber. I have no interest in plumbing. But I have one. And if I can save you 20 minutes of stress by telling you the name of a good plumber, then I would like to do that.
Wow. And so elitist with a lack of interest in plumbing there sounded kind of condescending towards those who plumb.
Pete, I live a life of the mind.
Are you terrible at fixing shit? Like, what's the most impressive thing you've done?
Oh God, nothing. There's nothing. I'm incapable. I have no idea how to do the simplest mechanical functions. I mean, I've had to do them just because I've been forced to do them. I installed a lolly column, which is literally just, you know, it's just a piece of metal that you stick under a beam and then tighten it to make sure that the ceiling, but, you know, it's not complicated though. I mean,
I only got competent at it by being shamed, by having kids. Saying I only got competent because I had people like my kids like watching and kind of shaming me. I'm like, yeah, I should probably figure out how to fix shit.
I will follow directions as best I can, and I'm not even good at following directions, but I have no ego. Like I will ask directions 3 times. I don't care. I have none of that manly shit about like, I got to figure it out myself. Nope. Tell me where I'm going.
How do you feel when your dog is being humped by another dog? Speaking of manly stuff, because a lot of guys I get very uncomfortable.
Do you? Does it really bother you?
Okay, no, I saw your tweet. That was great.
It annoys me, you know. And I think we may have discussed this in the past, but I've realized that so much. Oh no, I was talking with somebody else about this, but I've realized that I really hate performative manhood. Like it's probably it's a through line to most of the things that I dislike is
Same.
sort of, what people might call toxic masculinity. I would call it performative masculinity, of just, even when it's not toxic, but just this sort of chest beating. I'm a man and the world needs to know I'm a man. And you get these people, and it's not just men, actually. Some women are like this too at the dog park, where, dogs hump each other. It's a thing. It's not even sexual. I mean, especially if your dogs are, spayed and neutered. It's just it's a dominance thing. It's an alpha thing. And yeah, sometimes the lipstick comes out. That happens. And if it gets to that point, yes, separate the dogs. But when a dog humps another dog, as long as the other dog kind of fights back, and that's all part of wrestling. It's part of dogs being in a pack together. And yet some people, they get so weirded out the second a dog tries to mount another dog, or even like goes near them. And specifically dudes will just descend into gay panic. And it's so weird to me. And they're like, hey, your boys, hey, break it up. Hey. And they get so,
really?
Yeah, this guy yesterday just chasing my dog around the dog park because his dog and my dog were like humping each other. And
how did you say? Did you say anything?
Sir, they're going to work it out. They're dogs. They're going to work it out. It's all fine. But he didn't really speak English. He was Eastern European of some sort, which is, a lot of the older dudes in my neighborhood. They're all, either Slovenian or,
those cultures, I'm going to generalize, are often not the friendliest to the gays.
Not
by the way.
really. Yeah, they're.
I don't want to say this guy wasn't, but if he was reacting that way, it probably has some.
But it was just like he was just chasing them around, like he could not handle it. Just it was bothering him. Like it was a reflection on him somehow. It's like if my dog gets humped, that's almost like I'm getting butt fucked. You can't handle it.
You should have ran to him, sort of riding his leg.
That would have been a nice gesture.
What do you like this? I want to ask you, I know you got to go in a minute. I want to ask you just about two things if we have time. First, there's a lot of hubbub around Ellen DeGeneres. I always like to talk with you about anything pop culture, entertainment, especially comedy. What do you think of the whole controversy surrounding Ellen DeGeneres?
I mean, I've never.
Yeah, do you know her?
I've never watched a whole episode of her show. I mean, I've seen clips of it that float around online. From what I have gathered from people online, that, people are who they are, and they were who they are before they got into a position of power. A lot of people, and again, I don't know Ellen DeGeneres personally. I have no real personal stake in the matter, but a lot of people are nice until they can afford to not be nice. You learn a lot about somebody when they have the power and money to be an asshole, but aren't. Do you know what I mean? Like that speaks well of somebody when they get in a position of authority and don't turn into a raging prick. From what I've understood, a lot of the stuff that people talk about were kind of evident in her personality, from the beginning. And similarly, there's a lot of people that I know who, were they to be in Ellen's position, would be much worse than she is. Sure. There's a lot of people. I've made mistakes of kind of assuming that certain comedians, certain of our peers, were nice people, and then I realized, oh no, you weren't nice to me. I was just higher in status than you at the time, and so you felt like you had to be deferential to me because I'd been doing it longer. Yep. And you were newer. And now all of a sudden things have gone really well for you. And, you're actually not a nice person after all. 20 years, 19 years is a long time to do any show. So, I mean, what I imagine is that once the dust settled on this whole controversy, once this storm had been weathered, there probably was a part of her that was like, why am I even doing this anymore? Kind of similarly to, my wife owns this venue, and during the first part of the quarantine, she was fighting so hard to save this place that kind of took up all of her brain space. And then once it looked like, that the clouds are starting to part and we're going to be able to make it, then it was like, wait, do I even want to do this? Is this really important to me? Like, is this making me happy anymore? So, I mean, I don't feel like the two have to be connected, that you know, because she took kind of a public drubbing, that all of a sudden she's hitting the bricks. But I can see kind of getting to the other side of that, and then all of a sudden looking around and being like, why am I busting my ass for this? Like, it's all going to be diminishing returns from here on in. And
that's a great point.
I can dance to Muzak versions of soul songs anywhere.
All great points, and your response to that is exactly like a perfect example of why I like talking to you about certainly about issues that get, you know, lose all nuance on social media and media in general, because you just gave it every kind of hypothetical scenario there. And the only thing I would add is that working at the Colbert Report for 6 years, my experience there was he was the nicest guy in the world, and the atmosphere was really great. There were some people, you know, higher up producers though, that could be dicky, and it was almost like he allowed for it, so he didn't have to. And I think that that's okay sometimes, depending on where they're at, but that's sometimes just confusing.
Yeah, I mean,
too. Like,
honestly,
who's creating that atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to a certain degree, it depends, because sometimes you can get to a status where you can allow people to be the asshole for you, and you can kind of float above the fray, kind of like you were saying. That was what a lot of people said about Jay Leno when he took over the Tonight Show initially, that he had this agent, Helen Thomas, who was just a real piece of work, and that she was kind of his attack dog, and that I'm just Jay Leno, I'm just a nice guy, I get along with everybody. But she would be the bad guy for him. And I think Jim Carrey had an agent that was similar that people talked about. Might have been the same agent, I don't even remember. But you know, and also you are busy when you are running a show. You don't have the time to sort of keep tabs on what your the management is doing to the employees. I'm you know, from what I understand, she seems to be a bit of a jerk, you know, but I don't think that it seems particularly unique to Ellen DeGeneres. She's a person, and a lot of people can be jerks.
I want to ask you about Liz Cheney. You got time for it?
Yeah, sure. A couple minutes.
All right. Because I mean,
and again, this is why my opinions on Twitter please no one. Like, I will never go viral for my opinions on this kind of thing, because I need someone like you who kind of appreciates nuance to these things. Because there's a lot of people online who are like, thank you, Liz Cheney. You know, you are standing up for democracy, and God bless you, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then there's other people who are like, how dare you praise this woman? She sold out her gay sister. She's a warmonger. She's a horrible person. And it's criminal, you know, for you to embrace her in any context. And the truth of the matter is those things are both true. I always kind of default to, let them fight. Shut up. Let them fight. Why is my opinion necessary, really, in this context? I don't feel like everyone feels like they have to broadcast their take on every topic, and that, you know, the world must know that I am somehow adding to the sort of the great log in the sky, you know, that book that St. Peter opens, you know, that you're going to get to the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's going to be like, where were you on the Liz Cheney thing in 2021? and if you don't have a public, documented, stated position on it, then that somehow, you know.
I fully agree, and I live this kind of a little bit imposter syndrome-y thing when I weigh in on things, because it's never like that brilliant, I feel like. But I often will, to because I do want to weigh in on something, I will say a lot of people have been demanding, I write this in a tweet, that I weigh in on
yes,
what's happening, and hopefully everybody knows nobody cares. Nobody's asked me, nobody cares. They just want to say,
if you have an opinion, great. I mean, that's what social media is. I mean, I have an opinion for a living. I mean, I don't want to act like I'm better. I'm just as bad as everybody. But I just think that in situations like this, I don't feel like as a liberal, as a libtard, so to speak, that I don't have to support Liz Cheney. I don't have to support Liz Cheney. But I also don't think it's of a particular value right now to just rake her back and forth over the coals. I just think just water these plants. Like you can kind of let the situation fester and just be there to collect the benefit from it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
Let them, because, and I don't think what people realize, the more liberals come out against Liz Cheney, or I'm sorry, rather, the more liberals come out for Liz Cheney, the weaker her position comes within Republican politics.
Great point. Although the best point I think I've heard made, I'm trying to find it now, but basically it's not like liberals are so focused on, as you said, all of the other stances that she's had or hasn't. But really, it would seem the most important thing is, here it is, Bruce Bartlett tweeted, has anybody yet compiled a list of all the slavishly pro-Trump things that Liz Cheney said before January 6th? Meaning, what about her being complacent in or supportive of him?
Yeah, I mean, well, you don't pick your allies, and I would not call her an ally by any means, but it's like,
right.
You know, the people who change sides, so to speak, not that I believe that she's on my side, they're never going to be perfect. These are not perfect people.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with just kind of sitting back and letting her do her thing. Yeah. You know, and there is, at the end of the day, we can have policy disagreements all day long. And when I say policy disagreements, I don't mean to belittle this. It's like, whether black people should be allowed to vote is a big deal. Whether gay people should have equal rights is a big deal. So I don't want to diminish those things, but you can't have an argument with someone who argues that 2 + 2 = 5. You can't, it's impossible to have that argument. And the more people buy into the fact that 2 + 2 = 5 is a valid argument, the less likely it is that we will be living in a democracy in the next 30 years.
Very well said. Very well said. I know you got to go. Yes. I wish you the best of luck next week.
Thanks,
and we'll miss you. And well, talk to your agent. Take all the time you need on the podcast.
I will say hello.
We want you back strong. Stop that. Thank you, sir.
All right, I'll see you, dude. Bye.
All right. All right, there he goes, Christian Finnegan. Go out and reach out and connect with Christian and wish him the best of luck with his surgery. Can't wait till he's all better and comes back and joins us again. But because I always love talking to him. We'll miss him next week, but we will see him. I'll see him tomorrow night. If you're in Queens, in New York City, come by QED and check us out. We'll be doing a little stand-up comedy. And I'd love if you reached out to him and just gave him, best wishes or whatever you do when someone's in the circumstances, the situation that he's in. That's it for me, folks. What a week. Thank you so much for your support. If you haven't signed up for a paid subscription and you like this show, this is my job. So please consider a subscription. Thanks to all the new subscribers who did join this week. Thank you to my sponsor, Indeed.com. Go to Indeed.com/standup if you're looking to hire new people at your company, at your job. Appreciate their support and can't do it without you. Loved hanging out with people last night. Hope you have an awesome weekend. Reach out and connect if you want to talk anytime. DM me on Twitter or just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Have an awesome weekend, you guys. I love you. I'll check in with you on the Discord platform if you're a subscriber. And that's it. That's all. John Carroll, take it away, brother. You better stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be
stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Oh, got to stand